So I head up our CIO practice, so Chief Information Officers, those who have to deliver very large and complex IT systems and keep them running and keep them upgraded, and move everything to the cloud and roll out AI and do 100 other things. So Chief Information Officers are the ones with the bullseye on their back. Things don't work or they don't happen fast enough, especially right today. They won't happen fast enough. CIOs on the front line. Now, normally for a very big technology rollout or a major new tech trend, you would see the CIO really leading that, at least having ownership of it. It might be a big thing on the business side. It could be like, something to do with customer experience, but really the delivery is still in the end going to be done with IT because they have staff. They have enough people. They know how they connect all the systems together. They have the support. They have the operational chops. They have the whole thing, end to end. I'm a tech guy. I'm an enterprise architect. I've rolled out really big systems. I've still got probably about 500,000 lines of code in production today. So I know that there's a big disconnect between C-suite leaders and a lot of technology staff, and we can actually use this to kind of help deconflict. Because here's the kicker: 59% of CEOs, those are the ones that we talk to, and these are CEOs with over $1 billion in revenue. These are global, so it's North America, Europe, Asia. We talk to CEOs everywhere. And on top of the ones we sampled, we also did in-depth interviews to really climb inside the heads of these folks. So these are all CEOs are like in the top 3,000 or 4,000 organizations in the world. So this is what they're facing, and they think that they are leading AI in their organization, not implementation, but they think that they are leading AI strategy. 59% do, and that's because the board. I've talked to over 250 CIOs since generative AI came out, and almost universally they say the board is breathing down their neck to do something before a competitor derails what they're doing with AI. That's the big fear, is that it's a powerful enough technology that you'll be able to offer your products at least a lot cheaper, or you'll be able to offer breakthrough products that are much better. And it's going to happen in every industry and to every single company. And they know that. Boards are, their job is to protect the company long term, the guide and steward it. The CEO moves the company in the future and everyone else runs it. And so it's this big stack. And then all this stuff, what flows downhill to the tech teams, we have to cash the checks that are being written by actually making this work. And so this is what CEOs are thinking. They were much more conversant with AI than we suspected they would be. They did not talk technology at all, except maybe their Microsoft partnership or something, or Google partnership or something like that. They're really trying to figure out how to put AI in their organization, and then what they're going to do long term, and then how to protect against it. So we'll walk through this whole thing. We have a lot of data for you. I've tried to pare it down and make it reasonable. You can get the report if you need it, if you really want the whole thing. But let's go ahead and dive in. And I will take questions. So he's got to speak over me so I can hear you. So if you have a question, please jump in. Do ask them as we go along. So pretty much universally, CEOs don't look at AI as just a tool. It's not just this technology. I'm going to roll out like analytics and understand my business. They do understand it's a strategic new way of operating their business, and that it's going to affect every level of their organization. And maybe not now. And right now, it's only in corners of their organization, but it is in corners of their organization. But they view it's going to be everywhere, and they're right about that. And they know they have this choice. If they don't figure out how to disrupt with AI, they will be disrupted. And that's the concern. There's a tremendous amount of value and a great weight on their shoulders. They feel to do something. They don't know what it is. I mean, they have a sense. They know in the short term, they have a good sense. Long term, the things they want to do with AI is not ready for yet. We'll get into some of what that is. And so our study, which is all done just in the last, 60 days, we just finished it. We're trying to, things change so fast. If this information is more than just a month old, it's out of date. Things like DeepSeek happen and all the rules change suddenly overnight. So, we try and measure the real readiness. So what are the issues? What's the expected impact? What challenges? I mean, we won't get into all of it because I can't give away everything here. You can get the whole report for all the details, but we have some juicy stuff for you. And we did this in partnership with the management consultancy, Kearney, who offered up some of their CEOs in this. And so bottom line is the future belongs to those who act decisively, and it's very hard to act decisively in a fast-changing environment. And so, how do you do that? So, let's dive in. So, I'm sure you've heard all the Harvard Business Review headlines. Here's a few of them, that are almost certainly true. I've taken the most conservative ones, believe it or not. So AI is going to inject $20 trillion into the global economy easily by 2030. Everyone wants a piece of that. CEOs, their responsibility is to get a piece of that for their organization. And so they need to infuse it in their organization, find the right places to do it without blowing everything up at the same time, right? Because AI has real risks. Although most of them think it's manageable at this point. Every dollar spent on AI can deliver up to $5 in business value. That gets everyone. This is why you get the CFO is going to give the CIO the money, because a CEO is going to go to the CIO and say, "All right, give me their best ideas, and I know it's going to cost. Also, tell me how much it's going to cost, and then what are we going to get for that?" And that's what gets the money is. What are you going to get for it? And in our study, 78%, so virtually all of them, believe AI will drive competitive advantage going forward. You have to have AI in what you're doing, and many of them are starting in the obvious place like customer service and things like that, but they're doing other things too. We'll go into that. But only 25% think they're ready. So they know they're not ready. They know that, and with things like talent are really a big issue, but there's other issues too that we'll talk about. And it's not just automation. It's about being able to make decisions better and faster than your competition. At the end, that's what competition really is, to say, I know what to do with my company, the right direction to take, and I can get there ahead of my competition, beat them, and then I enjoy outsized advantages. So having the competitive advantage gives you outsize everything that you want, outsized market share, outsized profits, outsized revenue, all those things you want. So the race is on. So are CEOs leading? Are they really lagging? Are they helping? I mean, should they be leading? 59% think they are. Should they be leading?
Well,
right?
Can you go back to that for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is this the opinion of CEOs, or what is the source of these statements?
Who's your sample?
Great question. Almost every stat, the first two stats are pulled up from relatively authoritative government studies and things like that. Every other number that you'll pretty much see in this will be from what CEOs self-report. What do they believe? So this study helps you crawl inside their head. It doesn't mean it's accurate. It is what they think, and that's really important because they're in charge of the entire organization. So you have to take everything from that perspective. Understand it's not gospel. It's not necessarily reality. Although CEOs, to be effective, they have to have a pretty good connection with ground truth.
Yeah. Okay, because I questioned the first two as well.
Where did those come from? Yeah.
Where did those come from? And what are they basing it on?
I can tell you, I've already done my own, Mark. I have my own numbers. So, for example, the global labor market's right around $50 trillion. That's what it is. And so if you could automate a significant percentage of that using, let's say, AI agents, right? So I'm amazed. I'm talking to people. I'm doing another study on AI agents right now, and I'm talking to these early adopters in like highly regulated industries that are like be able to do things that were impossible just a few months ago with AI agents, in terms of making drug recommendations that screen all of the counterindications, that comply with all the regulatory compliance for that person in that state or even in that city. And they overlay all the AI agent overlays all of it that makes recommendation, and the doctor just has to check all the documentation, make sure they're okay with it, and then that prescription is issued. It's cutting for complex healthcare situations. They're using AI agents to cut the time to issue a prescription to somebody who has multiple major diseases. Is cutting it a week off that time. They can do it like in 2 minutes. So it's that kind of massive automation of very complex, as we become a very complex economy. So if we can tackle very complex situations like that now, I estimate of that $50 trillion global economic pie, AI is going to be able to do a good 25% of that.
And you're not saying that it's going to displace 20 trillion. You're saying that it's going to add 20 trillion because those people aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, because in most industries that are driven by technology, we're constrained by labor. That's the real issue, right? There's not enough developers, not enough testers, not enough anything. And that's just in technology. So we're every CIO I talked to, I think the last survey it was 90% said they're talent constrained. They're fundamentally limited by how much of talent they have or even can hire. They just can't hire. And a lot of other industries, high-tech industries, are also labor constrained. You can look at aerospace or anything else, tons of other things. And so if AI can automate the bottom third of those activities, that's easily 20 trillion per year. And if you look at 2/3 of organizations are looking at rolling out agents by the end of the year, right? So that's other data. So agents are coming really fast, and I think it's actually quite a little bit dangerous because I don't think we know how to put guardrails on them yet. If you look at like OpenAI operator, so what we're seeing, what CI is reporting is AI is just coming in over the floodgates. They're trying to stomp it out because it's coming in every tool. Everyone's using unsanctioned AI, their own devices. I mean, it's just everywhere. So will we see that 20 trillion? I think we will. Remember, this is 5 years from now. So both that labor market will be more like 60 or 70 trillion. Then you add AI to it, how much more you can generate with it. So yeah, it holds. I chose conservative numbers. There are people who are saying 30 or 40, which I think is crazy. Hope that helps. But yeah, these are not numbers we just idly throw around. These are conservative numbers given what we're seeing like what the advanced models can do is truly astounding. How much of IP they can generate, completely working IT systems or a new drug molecule, or it's Google, just as an aside, because I'm trying to technically ground some of this stuff for you guys who don't spend all day trying to think about these big numbers like we do.
Okay, yeah, please move on. I was just
it's really like so just really very AlphaFold. Google's AI can throw off new drug molecules faster than they can test them. That's the kind of economic acceleration we're talking about. I mean, way faster than they can test them. Okay, so important sidebars. Just make sure we're all on the same page here. So we saw some, there's not many double-digit gains left in the enterprise, or so we thought. But because we've applied automation everywhere, we've either coded it up or used low code or RPA or BPM or whatever it is to do all these things. But we're still seeing, at one bank we talked to said they were able to dramatically cut fraud because it can much more intelligently spot phishing and other exploits because it can read natural language and figure out when things are not correct. They were able to really substantially high double-digit reduction in bank fraud, for example.
So that was specifically about phishing and that kind of thing, or because when bank fraud to me could be the security.
Not specifically phishing as just an example to ground it. Oh no, they were using it broadly across all customer communication.
Right, so that kind of is a little scary because I would like to know more about that number because. Yeah. That could also be one of the algorithmic justice kind of situations where they decided to implement things that adversely impacted people that maybe shouldn't have been impacted. So I'd like to know more about how did they.
No, I'm in the also the media business, so I understand all these. When you boil stuff like this down, you lose all the nuance, right? So is it over triggering? Is over flagging scenarios? I would guess probably yes. We don't know, but they're very happy by the fact that they're seeing substantially lower fraud levels by applying generative AI to fraud detection.
Also, when we summarize to your point at a very high level, like bank cut fraud by 60%, do you believe there's tracking of insider threat that could be included in this? Because an insider threat would actually know the system that's being deployed. So do you think there's any timeline that you've come across for what a CEO is looking for? There are external threats and there's the internal threat. So when they think of fraud, it makes me think it's external, not internal. But I'd be curious if there's any follow-up research that you might be doing on internal.
Well, these are from conversations I actually had with CEOs for this study, and so I can tell you that they This particular CEO was looking primarily at external fraud, but insider threats are one of the biggest remaining, as you know, vectors in the organization today. So I believe this is mostly or all.
I mean, can I ask, is there a smaller bank? Because if you take the large banks like the Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, they've been doing this pretty efficiently before LLMs came along. So I was wondering if that bank really was not a tier one organization that had invested a lot of ML into fraud.
Very possibly.
Okay.
We did talk to a lot of regional organizations. We didn't necessarily always have the CEO of JP Morgan on the phone. Certainly, yeah. One of the stories that came out is that things that were hard to do but possible before became much easier with generative AI. So those fraud detection technologies might come at a very high price or very hard to implement, whereas with generative AI, they were able to much more quickly. The speed especially really came out. There was a lot of these stories all happened like in the last few months. It all happened within the last year. The rollouts I'm hearing consistently weeks, even in regulated industries, which I thought was very interesting. You don't hear that. You just don't. I mean, you don't hear anything in a regulated industry takes 2 years. Right? So,
and clearly these are you're saying AI. You're not saying Gen AI. So to the point about we've been doing.
We generally prepared all the conversation for this thing. We're really talking about the new stuff, generative AI.
Okay, because just getting back, I mean, I personally talked to a Canadian bank 12 years ago
Yeah,
about
I'm saying.
fraud detection using machine learning. Same with predictive maintenance and things like this. So I guess it's the new shiny thing, right? And maybe it's encouraging people to do the right thing.
Well, no. So, for example, so there's one CIO I was on the call with this CEO. They were explaining how they could do like it was the example I'm talking about is being able to prescribe drugs in a very complicated scenario. They could do this before using other technology. It just was very unreliable. When it got to the doctor, it just wasn't as accurate as the Gen AI. Which was able to correlate and overlay multiple different regulations that had to look right down to regional level what the regulations are, then overlay everything on top, and it could do that. It could read all the regs in real time and make sure that that they're being compliant. That it worked with certain drugs have to you can only prescribe generic drugs in certain areas, for example, things like that, and it was able to cut through everything and overlay on top. Even if the regulations were unusual or strangely stated or whatever. And previously, they would have to go and process all those regs and make them machine readable themselves, and they could never keep up. Said, we couldn't do it before, so it'd take a week to get a person their prescription. With Gen AI, could just easily zip through all of that, just process all like 10 or 12 documents. It would have to then overlay on top of each other, come up with a recommendation. It's pretty impressive stuff. So that's different.
And if it's encouraging people to really do it. The end of my story, in fact, was the CEO really loved this idea. And then we talked to middle management, and they quote said, "We don't need any fancy math to solve this problem." So maybe the Gen AI bandwagon will do it.
Well, just keep in mind, this a lot of these things are above their pay grade, so they're reporting what they've been told is the benefits that they're seeing. But for example, one insurer, this is the other example here. They do workers' comp, and there's all this. You have to read the entire case file to be able to answer some of these questions. And normally they have to make someone wait in the line while the person's going through the person's case file, trying to understand everything where it happened and where it was. Whereas the Gen AI could do a lot of that and only much less deflection to an agent where it says, you know what, I just can't make sense of this case file and where you are in your journey. I'm going to kick you to a human. He was able to navigate, long-term, like 5-year long workers' comp cases, process all of that. They said they couldn't do it before. Previously, the automated systems can only process case files that were very short or simple, and now they can do these big. So interesting. It's so again, these are grounded. These are Gen AI specific examples I'm giving here. So like, I didn't think there was 40% more to come out with predictive maintenance, but I will concede that a lot of these were organizations that couldn't afford big AI teams. Almost all of them said, we only now are really hired somebody who knows AI. Before we were too, it wasn't important enough for us to hire an AI lead to do this. For big companies, you already have big AI teams.
Yeah, for that second bullet, I mean, there's all the software players in this space. You have the SAPs, the IBM Maximos, the Oracles that have got specific offers in this space of predictive analytics for people that have large fleets, deployments of equipment, components within said equipment, because they pioneered a model, and that model that they've pioneered and that data they've been holding on to for decades in some cases. 40% is a big number, so I'm kind of wondering
I didn't expect to see it either, except these CEOs were very acutely aware of these numbers because their bonuses are
tied to this. Absolutely, yes.
So they have the numbers right in their back pocket. I was surprised how often they could just bring that right out. Oh yeah, I just gave $2 million in our customer care unit. So
Good point, Diane. A lot of these probably have nuances. Like maybe a specific situation where that's reducing maintenance downtime by a certain percentage, not all downtime by 40%.
I think
so. CEOs say they're ready, and they claim some confidence, but only 19% are really trying to do any kind of genuine true transformation, which I think it's early. It's not time to do major AI transformation because the vendors, the AI vendors are not mature or not ready. And so our finding is that there's overconfidence at the top, which masking execution inabilities below. And what's very interesting is that, because we ask these in separate questions, high performing firms decentralize their AI leadership. 59% of I'm trying to make sure I state this correctly because I see that I've got a rapt audience who's dialing into every detail. So the higher performing firms decentralize their AI, whereas the ones that micromanage they have a significantly higher failure rate for their AI initiatives. They self-report this. So we say, how much are you involved in leading AI? Are you involved in a week-to-week, day-to-day? And those CEOs tend to have a smaller percent of successful efforts than those that set the vision and said, go out and I want you to execute AI transformation in every part of the organization. Those CEOs tend to report higher success rates with AI.
Dion, is this a chicken or egg problem? I mean, the more successful companies, started out with a single micromanaging AI and then diverged into a more decentralized approach. And the ones that are still in micromanagement, they're just too early in the adoption cycle to really get effective use of it.
And it could be, and that could be useful analysis. But I can tell you from studying tech adoption for many, many years, CEOs don't understand technology adoption. And they don't understand that even if you automate some particular big thing in the business, there's still 1,000 processes and 1,000 apps that aren't affected. And so like with digital transformation, we saw the exact same pattern. Those that broadly decentralized digital transformation, they set a common vision, common goals, and then they said, go to your part, your division, your function, and execute digital transformation so that it can happen in more places rather than we just digitally transform a couple big things, but most of the organization is still antiquated. So we saw the exact same pattern. CEOs, because they weren't as involved in digital transformation or tech adoption, don't necessarily understand that. But one of the big insights was don't overly centralize AI adoption. Decentralize, and we have the data that says that they tend to have more success in doing that. We'll go to the next slide. If there's any questions, we can keep going. So the unsurprisingly, well-managed organizations that have more rigor, and I see this it tends to be larger organizations that have a professional project management office that and IT departments that actually track results. So 48% of high achievers rigorously track AI versus only 17% of the organizations that reported they were struggling somewhat with AI. So not surprising, and it's the message that we've always seen over and over again is you can't manage what you don't measure, and many organizations are used to if you're have a very powerful technology, you expect to be able to throw it over the wall and get some results, right? I'm going to get something good, right? And we know that's just not the case. You just can't be sure you're hitting your target, actually improving what you're really trying to improve. So we saw that high achievers, and we separate the questions deliberately so they don't know that they're answering that. So that's a key part of the study. And so AI without ROI tracking is just not worth doing. You know, and you're going to have that. You're going to say, oh, well, Copilot sounds good enough. I should roll it out across the organization. And some CEOs did cite that, said, well, we're rolling it out for AI productivity is one of our big initiatives. You know, are we having trouble tracking it? Well, those ROI numbers are hard to track as opposed to aiming AI at some very big and core process in your company.
So what are some of the metrics that they're trying to hit?
So, you know, their biggest numbers, of course, are their top and bottom line. Is the most important thing for a CEO. But, you know, of course, then if they're in specific businesses, you know, customer lifetime value, efficiency measures. A big one is, you know, time, you know, quote to cash. How long does it take for me from the time that someone places an order to the time that I actually get paid for that?
So do you see the CEOs looking at a specific, like how do they measure that? So like if they're implementing AI, that could be a huge, number of things. If they're implementing generative AI, do they track, like, do they start by tracking one specific area and see how it hits all of those metrics that are typical for the bottom line? Or do they, or is it just kind of like, if they get some AI?
The only ROI that we consistently heard from where they had numbers in their back pocket is where they tackled and put AI into a very specific function, like their tier 2 or tier 3 customer care, where that's been resistant to automation up until this point. They had real specific savings, like that $2 million savings from that workers' comp insurance company. They said, you know, we had our best customer care people tackled our toughest cases, and now we only need half those many people.
That's right.
Generative AI. Before that was unautomatable. And so I went to the board and I said, I just saved $2 million. Now give me more money to go do this. So that is when they the only numbers we really heard. In the survey we can't hear it, but we did. That's why we did the in-depth interviews. So we were specifically asking, where did you use AI? Where did it work? Where do you use generative AI? Where did it work? What do you see? And sometimes they couldn't say what they saw, but a lot of the time they had specific numbers.
So the specific numbers were cost savings from eliminating jobs.
Almost all cost savings. Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, there's not too many sales boosts. The customer retention is a big one. There was one ink manufacturer who made most of the ink. They're in Europe. They make most of the ink for newspapers and magazines these days, but their business is being eaten by companies in Asia. And what they're now competing is on the quality of customer service. They can answer questions in natural language. You can say, where's my ink shipment? How much outstanding do I have with you before you cut me off? How much credit are you giving me? They can ask simple questions, get very simple answers, and they're retaining customers. They believe, based on their conversations, is I know I get it cheaper, but they're much harder to work with compared to you. So we're working with you guys for now, right? So they're using generative AI to prevent customer defection, and you know, just frankly, to stay alive until they find out some breakthrough product.
Yeah, so you mentioned the LTV and there's the CAC and then there's like the churn. And so some of these numbers, it sounds like they're tying whatever was in their original dashboard, implementing AI, and if they're successful using these other metrics that you're sharing, that they did it the right way, they're able to probably brag about this to a board, to investors, and that's why they're able to trumpet a story.
Yes, correct. You're accurate.
Okay.
With my tongue firmly in cheek, did any of the CEOs comment on the Harvard Business Review story about how CEOs could be replaced by AI?
They did not. That did not come up.
It's all those other people.
Yeah, well, one of the things that came out, I'm trying to remember if we have a slide for it. One of the things that came out is that they, in the short term, they're doing these cost savings. These, you know, are addressing an urgent problem, a difficult problem that's targeted. But they want, like that ink company says, they want to do like AlphaFold. We talked about that. They said, yeah, we want a breakthrough formulation. We want like a new super cheap quick drying ink. It doesn't require UV, something like that. And he says, I actually have a lab effort to try out these ink formulations. We have one of the best AIs, and they're reformulating ink so that we can create a breakthrough product. And it hasn't produced it yet, but I have hope. So they are thinking like this kind of bigger thing, and that was tended to be an exception. We only heard that a couple other times, but it's very interesting how they're thinking. They're hoping this will give them be able to break through the barrier where they're kind of stuck in product development now. And as a result, as I mentioned, 95% of the companies surveyed and interviewed focused on these quick wins versus like, all right, how do I create breakthrough products and services? But they talked about it. They know it's coming. They either don't know how to do it or they don't think the AI is ready for it. Do I have it on the slide? No, but I'll just talk to it. So I talked to the head of a global audit firm, the CEO of a global audit firm, who says, my audit business is going to be dead in 3 years. There's no question about it. It's already being so extensively automated by AI that I'm going to AI enable it. AI will do, the majority of the 90% of the audit. It'll be overseen by auditors who can check everything. And then that's not my core business anymore. My core business is now saying, now that I have this in my model, I can help you make strategic decisions. I can recommend cost savings. I can recommend, kinds of useful financial instruments you can use to improve your finance or whatever they want. I can find risks for you and things like that. So they expect total business model innovation. And we also saw this in staffing firms. It said the same thing. It said staffing is completely changing. How we screen, how we interview, pre-screen, pre-interview, how we help companies on board is all being AI powered. And if I don't do it, I'm out of business. So, because all our competitors are doing it right in the middle of doing it right now, So it was interesting, but they still right now the majority of all their focus and spend is on these. All right, let's prove that it does something that we couldn't do before. Right. So, yeah, so it's very interesting. And of course, you wouldn't be surprised. There's no talent to do this, and it needs people. And they're all use a mix. Most of them are avoiding the big management consultancies. By the way, they say every management consultant is pitching AI transformation. And every single one of them has reached out and said, "We'll do your AI transformation." And the majority have resisted that so far, thinking they're not ready for large scale transformation. But they're working with usually smaller firms that are experts in their specific industry, like hospitality or whatever, where they say they already know our business. They've proven they know our business, our specific business, and now they're dealing with a lot of the cost and the expertise and talent issue. So we're just going to have them do a lot of our initial work. So that was common.
So when what did they see as the lack of experience? Was that from a data scientist or just like the ability to engineer prompts? What did they see as the biggest skill gap?
They weren't that granular. They were half of them were hiring an AI lead of some kind. Bigger companies were hiring, someone to lead a big AI effort, or CTO. They were hiring. So we're hiring our first CTO, and it's going to be we hired someone from the tech industry in Silicon Valley. We're super excited. We never do stuff like that, but they want AI literacy across a lot of different roles. Right, so not just data science. And they're upskilling. So some of them are everything from they've done all hands meetings, and then they've had extensive education programs. These tend to be in like areas like management consultancy and things like that, where this AI's front and center for they have to be offering that. So they're doing broad education across the entire base of firms. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Diane, it's Mitch Ashley. Did
Yeah, man.
the topic of developers and how we develop software or the AI skills that we need in IT and technical organizations come up, what they're thinking about that looks like in the next 2 to 3 years? Or is that kind of too far down the pipeline for them to?
I believe that's below their pay grade. But what's interesting is that they're not so much. I didn't hear that they were leaning on. I consistently did not hear that they're leaning on their CIO. They're more trying to hire someone who's really going to think about AI in the business And,
Okay.
might be a CTO, or it might be, we're just hiring an AI lead. But it seemed to me like the CEO is like doing this hiring outside of the IT loop. So it's something we like to press on. We're going to, follow up this study here and find out how things have changed. Because this is just, this is first full contact with the CEO really having to grapple with a transformative technology.
Awesome. Thanks.
None of them mentioned developers, just
Okay.
to answer your question specifically. Now, if you're in management theory, you understand, there's innovators, that are way out ahead. Then there's that big gap, and then there's, the early adopters and everyone else. And so a lot of companies want a fast follower approach. The smaller the company in general, if they want a fast follower approach, meaning as soon as they see someone having a certain success in their industry doing something, they're going to adopt it right away. But they're going to let all, the companies that make mistakes and don't do anything, they can say, well, that didn't work, so we're not going to do that either. So they let the people out front take the arrows. Those people out front can get outsized benefits if they guess correctly, they bet correctly on what the approach is going to be. But over half of CEOs that we surveyed and talked to prefer a fast follower approach. They're going to run right. They're going to see what works and they're going to run right in and do that. Yeah. Yet, what was interesting is when we asked about how aggressively they were rolling out AI, and then separately in a different question, much later on, we asked, how's that all going? Rushed AI rollouts had a higher failure rate, which is what you would expect, right? So if you're not really paying attention to your data, you're not really being agile, not listening to what you've learned, and genuinely learning from your early experience, and then adjusting and not assuming that you know what the outcome is going to be. That's what Agile tells us is that you know how much money you're going to spend, but you can't be 100% sure what you're going to develop because you don't know what you really need till you build it. So it's very interesting. And so almost 2/3 of struggling firms pursue aggressive AI strategies, which I think is right. If you do this too fast, the stuff is not ready. The products are not baked. They're not mature. We don't know who the top vendors are going to be yet to make the bets on. I don't know if they are going to be able to support this properly, or if you're even going to be using the right AI. So steady wins the race right now, because this is going to happen for another 5 or 10 years, right? So so we were able to get that from their impression of their AI portfolio versus how fast they're pushing. We were able to extract a signal about, don't push too hard. And then the power of letting go. And this is something I've seen in I've done a lot of work about, technology and business leadership and how it all fits together. And we see that leaders that can let go and allow the organization, the experts closest to the problem, you give them the support and the training and the education and the best practices that from across the organization so far, and then you let them innovate in their corner of the organization. And there's real power in letting go. And the leading firms that reported the most success, and we're able to see this, and you can see this in more detail in the report, really see distribute AI leadership across specialized teams and cross-functional teams in particular, especially early on when we're asking the questions, trying to find the signal. We're saying, well, where did you really see real results? And then when they brought cross-functional teams together, especially, they seem to be reporting better results. So I love to see that, as I think that's the right answer. And we see this with like open source software, decentralized development beats centralized development. Not every time, depends what you're doing, but a lot of the time.
And they're getting consistent governance as well. I mean, for things like.
Oh, we'll get to that. Is that the next? No. Well, let's make sure we get to the governance piece. Yes, we definitely asked about that. We have some data to share. The workforce fears about AI are real, and the CEO is aware of that. And 41% of them said they're not sufficiently addressing the impact on jobs and processes inside the firm. And is that the message that the way I've phrased this is when we tell people that AI will take humans and make them superhuman, that's a better message than saying that we're going to automate everything in the business that can be automated, and then where does that put the worker, right? So one of the messages that came out, those who have fearlessly embraced their AI and told their workers, don't worry about your jobs, but we're going to we're going to use this, but we need your help to do it. And you'll be part of the story. We need you, please be involved. Those are also the cohort that reported higher success rates. So creating a fearless culture, the key part. We have that. We have a playbook we've extracted from the most successful companies reporting the most success. Again, it's self-reported. We understand the limitations of it. No surprise here. A very clear signal: 60% of failed AI efforts. We said why, and they go, "Well, our data wasn't right. We couldn't get the data. It was bad, or it was late, or it always boiled down to some data." And this is what we would expect, because most organizations don't have sufficient data management to participate in a lot of these very integrated solutions. As AI works, generative AI in particular works well because it's able to integrate data from so many sources with a very, very little effort. And that a lot of the bang for the buck we saw when we talked about what was your generative AI pilot that was so successful, often was bringing data in real time from multiple sources and sorting through it. But the organizations that had failed efforts cited that bad data infrastructure in some form. Here's your governance slide. So most of them, not surprisingly, worried about AI bias and ethics. They think they've got guardrails, though, which I think they're very optimistic about that. But only half have a governance framework, so there's a big gap. And I imagine the governance framework is very immature as well. But we did not, in this version of the study, measure the maturity of it. We're trying to figure out a way of doing that. But,
do you have any? Were you able to dig in your interviews to understand if the concern is really about bias, or is this positioning that they believe they have to be concerned about bias because everybody else is concerned about it?
Some of it is lip service. They are more worried about some AI doing something wrong and having shareholder or public backlash. I think the fear is more there is a shareholder or public backlash because AI does something wrong is really more. And there's, yes, they care about bias and ethics, or at least they say they do. But when we actually specifically asked them, "But are you worried about a shareholder or public backlash?" They're like, "Yes, oh yeah, that's why we want guardrails and governance." So we didn't ask them that up front. We asked that as a follow-up question, just to make sure that we wanted them to bring it up, and they didn't bring it up until we brought it up. But then they said, "Oh yeah, that's our big concern." This is unfortunately what you'd expect. And of course, not surprised, finance, healthcare, insurance, highly regulated firms already had strong oversight. They already have a strong muscle for that sort of thing. They have a place to put it where that strong muscle is accessible. So not a surprise that everyone else lags significantly. That's not a surprise. They're planning to put in better governance councils. Most of the CEOs we talked to said they will want to do that. Trying to see if you guys would now that I understand a little bit what this audience's interests are. This is an aggregate. This 52% faster response time. It's in our study. But in terms of decision making, because that was such an unexpectedly loud signal where they basically said, we want to do decision making in real time if we can, faster. Like if we get a big basket of stocks, or we have to process an order that we think is high risk, we want to be able to make the decision if it's strategic to our company. There are some industries like aerospace where ability to bid on something or take an order can make or break. You might only take 3 orders a year. Or like you're a financial services firm, you're managing sovereign wealth. You might only have one chance at taking a sovereign, $10 billion from a sovereign wealth fund, and you have to decide: Can I turn a good return on this money? And I've got 2 hours to decide whether I can take this $10 billion, right? So they're very hungry for being able to make decisions in those scenarios. They broadly expect. They never said the word agent-based AI. But they all said they want to take and put AI in charge of actually doing the work of the business. So we talked about it. And this is that global audit firm where they expect that the actual AI will be the front line talking to the customer to do a lot of the audit process. That that there'll be auditors too, senior auditors overseeing everything and still humans talking. But a lot of that will be is now go talk. Our audit system has a bunch of questions for you, type of thing.
Well, in
that's
our
really-
agentic future, then the person that they're talking to is actually an AI agent as well. And so we
Yeah.
could have my AI agent talk to your AI agent. And
Oh yeah,
that'll
well,
be
as
much
I'm
more
doing it, I'm doing work on agent-based AI. Yeah, so the agents using agents, that's going to happen very, very quickly. I mean, it's already happening in some of these products, so it's very interesting. And it's not as much as CIOs need to learn about the ins and outs of an IT project. And now we've kind of left. There's more details, lots more data in the study. We just don't want to give it all away here. But it was clear that we said, what are you thinking about in 3 years? And they all had very different answers than what they were doing today. And it was all about, I need breakthrough products and services. I need things to compete. I need to do things my competitor isn't thinking of, but our customers want. And a lot of them just felt like AI is not ready to do that yet. And they're right about that. But they want to get there. And they are, the top cohort where there were definitely CEOs, they were thinking AI first. We have a heat map on what the top concerns are, which is very interesting. It varies. What companies are worried about is heavily dependent on industry. So some of them are not worried about their public brand so much, are risking it with AI, and others are incredibly sensitive to it. But I did want to get to this part right here. So we summarized. We took everything from all the high performing, what we believe the CEOs cohort that was the highest performing, and extracted what they did. To get to where they are so far. The ones that we use is by ones who are able to us right what they were seeing results that were very positive and had in many cases double-digit numbers that were not expected to be there, and not so many things you would find very surprising. We have the decentralization thing here, but the fearless culture, AI culture, I think was very interesting. Is they really quelled job security fears up front and said. And made them said, you're part of this story with us. The CEOs who report a lot of success tended to do that. So they didn't have resistance. They didn't encounter resistance, or a lot of people whose jobs are going to be automated, they can stall an automation project by just not revealing how it's actually done, right? It's very interesting. I've been involved in a lot of automation projects over the years, and there are very easy to block them if you have the right cohort of people. But the good CEOs really focused on not doing that. And just to wrap up, because we want to make sure we're sensitive on time. So strategy, talent, data, and governance in that order is what really matters. Understand where you want to go, what you want to do, making sure you have the talent to do anything at all, getting your data story straight, and then making sure you don't blow your own leg off with this stuff, which is, I'm waiting for the first really big bad generative AI incident, self-inflicted.
That's actually consistent with one of the predictions at another event I went to, which was All Things Open in Raleigh. At an AI meetup, they had a panel from Fidelity, Duke University, a startup, Flash, and then they also had someone from IBM. And that was actually a common prediction amongst that entire panel. Someone's going to do it badly at scale and be in the news for it.
Yeah,
And at this point, it'll probably seriously hurt the company. I mean, I think we're going to see a Fortune 50 company collapse because of a failed AI project.
We saw it happen. We've seen it happen now with cybersecurity. So, and because AI will infuse so many things, yes, I think the probability is very likely.
The equivalent of a data breach, right?
Well,
Yeah, exactly. It's self-inflicted. So, but if you really have a really important takeaway is this short-termerism, which is unfortunately how our financial markets are structured. It's all do something now, and don't give that much thought. They're all thinking some vague thought too. I want to do these things in the future, but few of them are making any serious investments to get there or even to study it. So it's interesting. So I hope you found that useful. That's our study. Lots more there. You can futurumgroup.com. You can go and request your copy, and we'll send it to you. But yeah, it is top of mind. It is top of mind, so expect lots of focus this year. At all the other data from all the other sources I've been tracking everyone else's data, everyone's saying, despite reservations about all these things, about talent, about the right platforms, everyone's forging ahead. 2/3 of organizations are forging ahead with major plans, and it's the biggest growth item to the budget other than cybersecurity, which is still often the biggest growth. But AI is the biggest new growth, the IT budget. We see that in our CIO study as well.
One problem they can inflict, you spoke about CEOs telling their employees, you're with us, we want to be better, we want to use AI to be a better, more successful company. If they do start firing people, well, that gets out. And once that gets out, every other CEO, kind of loses that ability to say, oh, don't worry, right? So there has to really be kind of a commitment for the CEO to follow through with that.
It has to be real, or the people will lead the sinking ship. And guess who leads? The best ones, right? They're like, so that's the challenge. Yeah, so interesting things, but let me tell you, it is top of mind. We had no CEO that said, "Oh, I'm not spending any time thinking about it." They're like, "No, I'm worried and I'm concerned, and we're doing things and we're trying things, and so it's real. And it's going to be one of the biggest transformations of our lifetime."